American reacts to the collapse of the German government. Let's take a look. Willkommen. My name is Sean Huggins, and this is React with Hugs. Let's hop straight into today's reaction. All right, I saw a video on this a couple days ago, and I kind of know that the headlines are not quite as bad as it seems. It's not as dramatic as it seems, but I still don't fully understand it. I just watched a short video explaining what's going on with the German government and stuff, and I don't know if anything has happened since that video, and if so, this video is a lot longer, so I'm assuming this will be more in-depth either way. So, you know, as an American, I can't say much about, criticizing other governments, especially right now after election season. So I'm just a neutral party in this, just looking for information. All right, so let's find out what's going on with the German government. Los geht's.
The last 2 weeks were intense, to say the least. Not only did the US elect a new president, but the very next
Can't escape it. Can't escape it. Dang it!
day, the German government collapsed. So let's talk about what happened and what that means for Germany.
I need coffee
Hello,
for this one.
servus, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Feli. I'm originally from Munich, Germany, but I've been living here in Cincinnati, Ohio, on and off since 2016. So you may have seen headlines like these in the last few days.
Whoa. Germany's governing coalition collapses.
And asked
5 things to know about Germany's government crisis.
yourself, what exactly does that mean?
gosh.
I received quite a lot of messages from you guys asking if I could shed some light on this, so let's do it. First of all, what happened exactly? On
I don't know, that's why I clicked on the video.
November 6th, so the day after the US election, the federal government of Germany got together to discuss the budget for the upcoming year, and particularly to find a way to close a €1 billion gap in the budget. But they didn't come to an agreement. Chancellor Olaf Scholz and his Social Democratic Party, the SPD, wanted to take on more debt than initially planned and use the extra money to boost Germany's struggling economy by lowering energy prices and offering investment incentives.
So he wanted to spend more money to help the country, hopefully boost the economy, hopefully. Got it.
They also wanted to send additional support to Ukraine. But the finance minister, Christian Lindner, who belongs to the Libertarian Party FDP, blocked this, saying that it would violate Germany's constitutional debt brake, the Schuldenbremse. And he disagreed with Scholz, who said that there would be a legal workaround for this. Now, after just finding out that Donald Trump was coming back into office, there was certainly a lot of pressure on the German government that day. Economy experts have projected that Trump's tariffs would further increase inflation all over the world.
Oh, lovely. I can't wait for that. Yay. Who could have seen that coming except everybody? Except for people that voted for him.
And for Germany particularly, it's estimated that this will cost the country roughly $127 billion over the next 4 years. And it's due to Trump's approach to the war in Ukraine that the German government felt like it would be especially important at this time to provide extra support for that region. But instead of sticking together during these uncertain times, something must have happened on November 6th, because by the end of the day, Chancellor Olaf Scholz decided to put his foot down once and for all and fired Finance Minister Christian Lindner. Scholz explained his decision by saying,
whenever you have a political opponent that doesn't agree with you, just fire them and replace them with someone who does agree with you. And, you know, that's politics, baby.
Ich sehe mich zu diesem Schritt gezwungen, Schaden von unserem Land abzuwenden.
He stated that Lindner has repeatedly betrayed his confidence and wasn't willing to find compromises to make decisions for the entire country, but instead got hung up on party politics and kept blocking negotiations. Lindner, on the other hand, accused Scholz of unnecessarily staging his dismissal instead of ending the government coalition on neutral terms, and said that Scholz is leading Germany into a phase of uncertainty.
I totally understand what he's saying, but more importantly, great beard this guy has.
Now, technically, firing a minister doesn't automatically mean the whole government falls apart. In theory, Scholz could have just appointed someone new. But in this case, this wasn't just a disagreement between Scholz and Lindner, but the result of continuous disputes between the three governing parties that have been building up for a while. So at the end, it wasn't just Lindner who left the government, but his entire party, the FDP, left with him, including...
Oh, okay, now we're getting into it. So this is the coalition. So Scholz is up here in the coalition with all these other people, and then FDP is down here, and they got rid of this guy. Okay. See, it's all coming together now.
Including Justice Minister Marco Buschmann and Education Minister Bettina Stark-Watzinger. The only exception was the Transport Minister, Volker Wissing, who instead of leaving the government, chose to leave the FDP and stay in the government as an independent politician for now. So ultimately, the FDP withdrawing from the government means that the current government coalition is collapsing, and as a result of this, there will be a snap election in February. But to fully understand why that's the case, we need to talk about how the political system works in Germany.
Let's do it.
Unlike the US, which has what's called a presidential system, Germany is set up as a parliamentary system, which means that the German government isn't elected by the citizens, but by the parliament, which is...
Oh. Okay, interesting. So the citizens elect the legislative branch of government, and then they select the executives. See, in America, we vote for both. Interesting.
Just called Bundestag in German. It's kind of what the House of Representatives is here in the US. So as German citizens, we vote for the parties we want represented in the parliament. And because we use proportional representation, we don't only have two parties sitting in the parliament, as is the case here in the US, but usually about 7 to 8 different political parties.
Whoa, look at all these people. Whoa, who's this guy? Who's this? Who's this lone soul right here in the middle? Who's that guy? Blue and gray, SSW? I don't know who this guy is right in the middle, but he is he is holding his ground. Maybe that's the independent guy.
Parties that fill up the seats according to the percentage of votes they get from the population. If you want to know more about how the German parliament elections work in detail, I actually made a video about that back in 2021 during the last election. I'll link that up here for you. But for now, all we need to know is that the citizens vote for which parties they want in the parliament and at which ratio, and the parliament then elects the chancellor, who is the head of government, or you could also say the head of the executive.
Olaf Scholz.
Branch. In other countries, this position is also sometimes called the Prime Minister, like in the UK. And in the US, of course, the head of government is the president, but he also has some functions beyond that, so his role is a little bigger than that of a chancellor or prime minister. But let's go back to Germany. So in order to elect a chancellor, the bigger parties each nominate a candidate, and to win, they will need an absolute majority, so over 50% of the votes within the parliament. Now, naturally, every party is going to vote for their own candidate, so unless one party has more than 50% of the seats, which hasn't happened since 1957, none of the candidates will get an absolute majority. The solution to this issue is that 2 or more parties team up with each other in order to...
Oh, they tag team it, and that's when the coalitions come into play. Okay, it's all making sense now.
Accumulate the necessary votes and form the government together, which is called a coalition. So right after the parliament election results are in, the different parties enter negotiations with each other and see who they'd be willing to work with and which compromises would need to be made. Some of the parties are a little bit more flexible with who they could collaborate with based on their political orientation. Others are more limited, but there's typically more than one possible option for a coalition. These negotiations can take weeks or sometimes even months. That's what happened after the election in 2017 during Merkel's last term, where it took them almost half a year to finally form a government.
Half of a year? Wait, It took half of a year to form the government? What happens for a half of a year before that? So there's no government?
Negotiations,
How does
they
that
usually
work?
talk about which party the chancellor will come from. Typically, it's the party with the most votes, which party gets which ministries, and they try to find some common ground in regards to topics that the parties might have different standpoints on. Then they sign a coalition agreement, and the Bundestag officially elects the chancellor. And now the parties that are part of the coalition all vote for the same candidate, of course. Then the chancellor and the ministers are officially appointed by the Bundespräsident, the president, who is officially our head of state, but takes on a mostly representative function.
Wow, this is the president of Germany. Cool. I didn't know that Germany had a president, even if it's mostly ceremonial.
Kind of like the British king. In the past, we've had a coalition of CDU, which is the Christian Conservative Party, and SPD, the Social Democrats, for example. That was the case during Merkel's last term. Or we've had a coalition of SPD and the Green Party, CDU and FDP, and so on. And since 2021, we've had a coalition of 3 parties: SPD, the Green Party, and the FDP. And because of their party colors, this coalition has commonly been referred to as the traffic light coalition.
I like that. That's fun. I like when they can make it fun.
Ampelkoalition or Ampelregierung. But with the FDP actually being a little more on the center-right side of the political spectrum, at least in terms of their economic views, and the SPD and Green Party more on the center-left side, there were a lot of disagreements in this coalition from the very beginning.
So this chart here is actually sort of the political spectrum as well. So you can see who's right and who's left leaning. Interesting. Okay. So now I'm wondering, who are these gray people all the way over here? And who are these purple people all the way down here? That would be interesting to see. And still very curious who this one singular dead smack in the middle person is who's all alone.
Which is why they've gained a pretty bad reputation for publicly fighting with each other instead of presenting themselves as a team. So with that going on for over 3 years now, did it come as a big surprise that the coalition finally collapsed? Definitely not. But I don't think anyone really expected it to happen on a random Wednesday. Even the Green Party, who is part of the coalition, didn't seem to see it coming, and they even said in their statement afterwards that they considered it a preventable step.
Dennoch will ich sagen, für uns sagen, dass sich das heute Abend falsch und nicht richtig anfühlt. Geradezu tragisch an einem Tag wie diesen, wo Deutschland in Europa Geschlossenheit und Handlungsfähigkeit zeigen muss. Wir wollen auch sagen, dass es nicht nötig gewesen wäre, dass der Abend so endet. Es ist nicht gelungen, den Haushalt, die Haushaltslücke zu schließen. Dabei waren Lösungsmöglichkeiten auf dem Tisch.
Now, what does all of this mean for Germany moving forward? What happens next?
Let's find out together.
For now, Olaf Scholz is still our chancellor and the government is still in office. The SPD and the Green Party have replaced the 3 ministers who belong to the FDP with people from their own parties, and they're now what's called a minority government, since without the FDP, they don't actually have an absolute majority in the Bundestag anymore, which will make it extremely hard to pass any policies.
Wow, okay, so looking at this, it looks like there's 4 main parties, I guess. Red, green, yellow, and black. So I feel like it's hard for the people on the left and the right to sneak in there and get represented in a coalition, probably. Well, it looks like the far left, the really far left, has a lot less than the really far right. So maybe if all these blue people got together, then maybe they would be about the same size as yellow or green. But it looks like the red is the biggest, and then black is probably the second biggest. Interesting. I just want this guy to be in a coalition. All I care about is this guy right here in the center.
That's why this is only a temporary solution, and Olaf Scholz already announced that he will hold a vote of confidence in the Bundestag. In German, we call this Vertrauensfrage, and it's something that the chancellor can do whenever they're not sure if their government is still supported by the parliament, either to stabilize the political situation and create a new sense of legitimacy, or to initiate a snap election. That's what's going on in this case because Scholz is expecting to lose the vote of confidence, which then allows him to ask the president to dissolve the Bundestag within 21 days and request new elections, which will have to take place within 60 days of that. The last time a German chancellor asked for a vote of confidence was in 2005, by the way, when Chancellor Gerhard Schröder wanted early elections and ended up losing against Angela Merkel, who, as you probably know, went on to be our chancellor for a whole 16 years. Now, typically, Scholz doesn't have to dissolve the parliament.
Back to back German champion. Holy crap.
Even if he does lose the vote of confidence, because it's totally legal and possible to govern as a minority government.
Okay, so you could still govern as a minority government. So it's not like the whole, like everything is collapsing and everything is terrible and like the whole government is on fire and everything is bad. This country will still run even with a minority government. So that's good.
We just recently had a minority government on the state level in Thuringia, for example, and they might actually end up with another one for the next 4 years. But especially on the federal level, it's not very practical long term. And as a politician who wants the best for their country, it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense to cling to that. The vote of confidence can also be done the other way around, by the way, which is then called a konstruktives Misstrauensvotum, or in English, constructive vote of no confidence. So in that case, the parliament initiates the vote and has the option to elect a new chancellor if they want. Now, ever since Scholz fired Lindner, there have been a lot of discussions in Germany about the timeline of all of this. Scholz initially suggested to do the vote of confidence in January and then have the elections in March. He wanted to make sure that some of the bills that the government has been working on could still get passed before the end of the year.
Oh, so he wants to wait as long as he can so that he can get stuff passed. And then he wants to have the vote of confidence. So then if the coalitions change, then the stuff that he wants to get done is already done, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
With the support of some of the opposition parties, especially the budget needs to be figured out. But in response, some of the people from the opposition accused him of clinging on to his position as chancellor and requested for the elections to take place earlier. But then again, there were city administrations who voiced their concerns and said that it's not possible for them to organize an election that quickly because that requires a lot of logistics that they hadn't planned for. And a lot of the political parties asked for a little more time to nominate their candidates and prepare to campaign, especially with the holidays coming up.
Also, a fair statement. How are you going to have an election if no one has campaigned and nobody, you don't know who to vote for? Because nobody is out there campaigning or putting out what they're representing and their beliefs and their policies and stuff. It takes time. It does take time. Interesting.
Particularly smaller parties who aren't already represented in the Bundestag or in one of the state parliaments are struggling because they need to collect thousands of signatures first to even be on the ballot. And those parties don't typically have any full-time staff, but rely on volunteers. But after a lot of back and forth, the big parties have finally found a compromise and announced this past Tuesday that the vote of confidence will now take place on December 16th and the snap election will take place on February 23rd. Now, how is this upcoming election going to change the political landscape in Germany? Who's running for chancellor? And which party is projected
Bring back Angela Merkel
to get the most votes? First of all, the next election in Germany was scheduled for September of 2025 anyway, so some of the preparations had already started in the background, and the political changes were most likely going to come either way. It's just happening half a year early now. Currently, the polls look like this. Of course, this can still change by February, but as of right now, it looks like the party with the most votes, about 33%, will be the CDU.
All right, let's see here. Number 1, CDU/CSU. Number 2, AFD. Interesting. And then number 3, the one that is currently in the government, SPD. Oh, so they dropped all the way to number 3. Oh, snap. And then you got the Green and the Sonstig tied at 11%, and then it goes down even further from there. So really, you got like The SPD, the CDU/CSU, and the AFD. Those are like the three big ones. Oh, so maybe those three will make a coalition? I don't know.
CSU, which is a union of two parties, the Christian Democratic Party and the Christian Social Party.
Oh, so the black ones are already two teams teamed up together. Wow. That's like a coalition within a coalition. Coalitionception.
The CSU can only be elected in the state of Bavaria, while the CDU can be elected in the other 15 states.
Huh? What? CDU can be elected in every state except for Bavaria, and then that has to be the CSU? Huh?
It's kind of complicated, but on the federal level, they usually work together and are often just referred to as die Union, the union. So every time I mentioned the CDU earlier in this video, I actually meant both of them. This is the party that Angela Merkel was in, and they're considered one of the big Volksparteien in Germany, people's parties. They can be described as center-right or Christian conservative.
Aha, okay, so these are all the black guys over here, and that's what the blue with the black ring is too. So all of that, oh my gosh, so that big giant chunk is all the same party then. Wow. Okay, that's very significant then.
On the political spectrum. Their chancellor candidate this time is Friedrich Merz, who's considered one of the more conservative politicians within the party. Oh. And the way it looks right now, he will most likely become Germany's next chancellor.
Oh, one of the most conservative of an already right-leaning conservative party. Interesting. Very interesting.
The second strongest party on here with 17% of the votes is the AfD, which is a far-right party that's been gaining a lot of support in Germany over the last few years, even though they were only founded in 2013. In the state election in Thuringia this past September, they actually received the majority of the votes, which marked the first time since World War II that a far-right party won a German election.
Oh, interesting. Huh, okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay.
Yet, since no other party was willing to form a coalition with them, it doesn't look like they'll end up in the state government there, which still hasn't been formed as of right now. The AfD is known for being anti-immigration and wanting to leave the European Union, among other things.
Oh. All right. Okay.
And AfD stands for Alternative für Deutschland, so alternative for Germany. They're definitely the most polarizing and controversial party in the parliament right now. In the states of Thuringia, Saxony, and Saxony-Anhalt, the domestic intelligence agencies have even classified the AfD as confirmed right-wing extremist.
Oh! And they're winning elections. Okay. All right, interesting. Good to know. I'm sure since they're mentioned in this video, I will be hearing about them in the comments section. So I look forward to seeing some opinions on these guys in the comments section. I'm sure I'll have a lot of opinions. So definitely leave your mustard down below.
If you want to learn more about the party, I'll link an English-speaking documentary about them in the info box below. Their candidate for chancellor will be Alice Weidel, even though I should say that so far we've only ever had chancellors from the SPD or the Union in the history of the Federal Republic of Germany. Which brings me to the third strongest force in these polls, which is Scholz's party, the Social Democratic SPD. They've traditionally been considered the other big people's party besides the Union, but as we can see in the numbers, they've definitely lost some of that support recently. They're considered to be center-left on the political spectrum, and as of right now, we don't officially know yet who their candidate will be. It'll either be Olaf Scholz again, or there has also been some talk about the current defense minister, Boris Pistorius, being a better...
Oh, Boris Pistorius. Dude, that's a crazy name. Pistorius. Dude, defense minister Boris Pistorius. Dude, that's a really... That guy got my vote just for his name. I don't know anything about him, but That name, 10 out of 10.
Better option. He said he didn't want to run, but I guess we'll see. Then we have the Green Party with a projected 11% of the votes. They can also be described as center-left, similar to the SPD, with one of their main focuses being the environment. Even though ever since they were founded in the 1980s, they've become an established party with a broad party program that goes beyond just environmental topics. Their chancellor candidate for the upcoming election will be current economy minister and vice chancellor Robert Habeck. Then we have a brand new party in this poll, showing up with 5%, the BSW, Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht, or Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance. This party was actually just founded earlier this year by a politician who used to be a prominent member of the Left Party, Die Linke. So she was already a representative in the Bundestag as a member of the Left Party.
Wow, so this is just one person started it this year, and she has 5% of the votes. Wow. Very impressive, actually.
But then decided to split off and found her own party, and several other representatives actually decided to go with her, which is why they currently have 10 BSW party members sitting in parliament, even though the party didn't even exist during the last.
So that is those people that I was asking about before, the BSW. Okay, cool. Well, that explains that. Interesting.
Elections. Generally, the BSW is considered to be even further left than the Left Party, and has also been described as a left-wing populist or nationalist. The Left Party itself only shows up with 3% on this poll. They're actually a descendant of the SED party that ruled in former East Germany. And unless they win at least 3 direct candidates in the election, they might not actually make it into the parliament at all this time, because they would need at least 5% for that. But I explained all the details of that in my election video. And last but not least, there is the FDP, which you've already heard so much about today. They're officially called the Free Democratic Party, and they're kind of similar to what you would call libertarian in the US, except that they're more progressive in regards to social issues. But they're a very business-focused party that advocates for a free market. On the political spectrum, they're usually considered center-right, and if they only get 4%, as this poll suggests, they might not make it back into the parliament either this time.
Wow, so things could really be changing very drastically with this vote then. There might be a completely different coalition and maybe swing on the whole other side of the political spectrum too in Germany with this election. And then some parties might not even make it that are in the coalitions right now. And wow, a lot of changes could be happening soon.
Upcoming election. So since the last elections in September of 2021, where the SPD was the strongest party, there have definitely been a lot of changes. One issue for forming a coalition this time could be that almost none of the other parties are willing to collaborate with the AfD because of a fundamental difference in core values, which might make forming a coalition a little tricky again, but we'll see how it turns out in February.
Wow. So they are the second largest party in the country, and yet nobody wants to form a coalition with them. Wow. That I don't know how to feel about that. That's something. I don't know. I don't know. That's a little interesting. Interesting to say the least.
So in summary, the German government coalition collapsed the day after the US election when the chancellor fired the finance minister, which led one of the 3 governing parties to withdraw from the government coalition. As a result, Germany will have an early election in February instead of the planned election in September, which will result in a new federal parliament and will most likely also have a new chancellor, since Scholz hasn't even officially been nominated yet, and even if he does run, he would have pretty slim chances of winning. So the next chancellor of Germany will most likely be Friedrich Merz from the Christian conservative CDU. One thing that a lot of Germans aren't super excited about is that politics will now probably play a pretty big role over the holidays. And if the next election after this one takes place according to the regular schedule, it would take place in February again, but we'll see what happens. I hope I could clear up some of your questions about the political situation in Germany.
Thanks. Wow. Okay. So that video was definitely a lot more in-depth than the last one that I watched. So that was cool. That was interesting. Dude, I need a haircut. I don't know what to think. I mean, I'm not a political guy in America, not a political guy in Germany. I don't follow politics all that much. It's it's one of those things that it's interesting to kind of know a little bit about, but I don't know much. On the world stage, I don't know much about American politics, German politics, any other country's politics, but it's interesting when I do dip my toes into it. Let's just say that. But of course, as always, I want to hear from you guys, the experts. What do you think? You guys are the ones born and raised in Germany. What do you think of the German government collapsing, the new election coming up, and everything that's going on with that? Let me know your thoughts. Leave your mustard down in the comment section below. And when you're done there, check out madewithhugs.com for merch and more content. But that's all the time that I have for today. Thank you guys so much for being here. And as always, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.